Today we're going to be making some delicious apricot syrup. And this is probably one of my favorite syrups. You can also use it on ice cream or anything that you want to adorn with some really good apricot syrup. Now let me show you why I'm making apricot syrup today. So I came home from a couple days of being out of town, and all of a sudden my whole tree is starting to ripen with all kinds of apricots. So this was one of the first things that I wanted to make, was some apricot syrup. So this could not be easier. This is definitely an easy recipe. It just takes a little bit of time. So you start off with 2 quarts of cold water and 2 tablespoons of fruit fresh, or you could use some bottled lemonade. You just want to use something that isn't going to turn your apricots brown. So I put the fruit fresh in, and we're going to be draining it out. So this isn't something you're going to be cooking with, but it does keep your apricots nice when you're cooking them. So all you're going to do at this point is take your ripe apricots. You don't have to peel them. All you have to do is just open them up, check them, make sure there's no worms or anything like that. I usually cut off the very top part, and I just cut them in half. And this is just a good time to inspect your fruit, just to make sure that there's no problems with any of it. Okay, so I've got all of my apricots halved and cleaned, and all I'm going to do is put these apricots into a pan, and I want to cook these down until they're like very soft, because we're going to put them through a food mill, and that way it's going to take all the peelings and everything off of them, and we're going to have just a wonderful apricot puree. And I'll show you how we'll turn that into syrup. It's very easy. It's very delicious, especially if you want something sweet on, say, vanilla ice cream or something like that. Now, as you notice, I didn't measure at this point, because we need a cup of puree to 1.5 cups of sugar. So we're going to cook this down quite a bit, and then we're going to measure it and see how much we have. So we're going to take a little bit of fresh water, and we're just going to pour this over the apricots, just enough to cover the bottom. And then we're going to cook this down. And I'm cooking it on high initially, but I'm going to turn that down to medium. And when we get this all cooked, then we're going to go ahead and I'll show you how to turn it into syrup. So our apricots are starting to cook down, and I am just giving them a quick stir. And as you can see, a lot of liquid is coming out of these apricots. I did put about maybe 1.5 cups of water in here, and already these have released a ton of liquid. So I'm gonna let these continue to cook down. I want them really soft so that we can just put them right through the food mill. So my apricots are about ready to put through the food mill. As you can see, they're just really falling apart. So if you've never seen a food mill, it's just kind of like a little tool. You put your different things inside of it, and it pushes the pulp through, and you end up keeping like seeds and skin and things like that. So I've got a separate bowl here. I'm going to put some of these apricots through my food mill. So I want to separate the pulp from these skins. So basically you're looking for the pulp to be a lot drier, and this is what comes out at the end. So I've got about 9 cups of our mixture of apricot. So to that, I'm going to add the juice of a couple of lemons. So I've added 2 lemons and 9 cups of sugar. So I've got 9 cups of apricot nectar and 9 cups of sugar. I decided to do a little bit less sugar than what the recipe called for. So I'm gonna let that heat back up. And in the meantime, I'm gonna start heating up my bottles, my canning bottles. And I'll bring you back as soon as we start canning our apricot syrup. I wish you could smell it in here. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. Time to start canning up our syrup. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting this into glass bottles. Now this syrup is not as thick as it should be right here, but as soon as it starts to cool off after it's canned, it's gonna become a lot thicker. So I'm gonna go ahead and start pouring it in the jars, and I'm gonna fill it up to just a 1/4 inch head space, just like I was filling up a mason jar. Very hot, so I have to be really careful with this syrup. All right, now I'm going to clean the rim of the jars just like I would a regular mason jar, and I've got some hot little caps that I'm going to put on them. Now it's really important, just like a mason jar, that these lids are able to seal, and they can only do that if there's a nice seal from the glass to the jar, all right. So I'm gonna put these in the canner while I get the other ones filled up. Now these don't exactly fit when you're using a bottle lifter, so I'm actually gonna use a dry towel and put it in that way. So I just took my apricot syrup out of the canner. I let it boil for 10 minutes after the canner got up to a boil. I let it sit in there for 5 minutes, and now let me show you how much syrup I got from those apricots. So this is the apricot syrup that I just got done canning. It's absolutely beautiful. I got 3 pints, and then I got 3 of these barbecue bottles, and I got 2 of the syrup bottles. So I got a ton of apricot syrup.